Hello and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the southeast. Fuel prices hit a record high, almost £2 a litre in parts of Kent and Sussex, and rising.
Almost £2 per litre. This is not sustainable, I must say. It's very, very expensive.
From Ukraine to Canterbury, how Olha endured a journey of 2,000 miles from the front line to safety.
Also tonight, why a rise in urban beekeeping is seeing them thrive in places you wouldn't expect.
Going.
And the Harry Potter book, bought for £12.99 in 1997, and the spellbinding amount it fetched at auction. Good evening. The war in Ukraine is now hitting drivers in the UK hard, with petrol and diesel prices heading to the once unimaginable level of £2 a litre. And according to experts, once the restrictions on the import of Russian oil begin, the prices could rise even higher.
Well, motorists on the M23 in Sussex were paying £1.89.9 for diesel. At forecourts in Ruton and Bearsted, they were being charged £1.93.9 this afternoon. Well, although there was no shortage of customers, as Sarah Saunders now reports, it means real pain for many.
Increasingly cash-strapped drivers were filling up in Bearsted today, where diesel is on sale for more than £1.93 a litre.
I'm actually going to work at the William Harvey Hospital. I'm a doctor, and the pump price has been horrible, horrendously expensive. I was actually going to pull up at Shell, and I saw the pump price, almost £2 per litre, and this is not sustainable, I must say. It's very, very expensive.
Restrictions on Russian oil are driving prices ever higher, leaving mum Nikki Lewis opting to ditch the car whenever she can.
And I walk most places now because, it's a lot of money.
But with some petrol stations charging wildly different prices within yards of each other, there are calls for more transparent pricing and a cut in fuel duty.
UK drivers are still the highest taxed in the world. What we're calling for is the government to actually put a significant cut in fuel duty, at least 5p. And the other one, of course, is we need to introduce a pump pricing regulatory body that actually monitors that we're getting fair pricing at the pumps. We've got Ofcom, we've got Ofgem, we've got Ofwat. Why haven't we got Ofpump? We want Pump Watch.
OK, thank you.
At this taxi and courier firm in Maidstone, they're trying to absorb the price rises rather than pass them on to customers.
A taxi is, in some ways, a luxury for some people, and if they remove that luxury, then we don't exist.
So in the meantime, you and your drivers are having to absorb the difference?
Yep, everybody's taking a bit of a hit, even though everything around us is increasing. We're getting less, so it kind of every month you're worse off than what you were 2 or 3 years ago.
And all this has sparked an interest in electric.
Since the tragic invasion of Ukraine and the rapid rising of the petrol and diesel prices, we've seen an increase in our hires of about 130%. So the highs have risen very sharply in a short period of time already.
There is a price to pay for tightening the economic noose around Russia. That much is already clear at the petrol pumps. While drivers groups say we haven't seen a single day jump in the price of diesel like this for 20 years. And what that means is that to fill up your average family car, it will now cost you around £90 per tank. Well, as the conflict in Ukraine continues, wholesale prices have continued to soar. So we will continue to see more price rises at the petrol pumps.
OK, Sarah, for the time being, thank you. Well, let's stay with those fuel and energy prices for the moment. What is the alternative to oil and petrol? Building more wind and solar farms in the southeast would help secure our future power supply, according to the chair of the UK's Climate Change Committee.
Yes, Lord Deben, who has been championing the environmental message since his days in Margaret Thatcher's cabinet, was speaking on a tour of Kent with more. Kit Bradshaw.
There is a crunch on at the moment. We need to intensify our self-reliance.
How does Europe free itself from relying on Russian energy? A question leaders are grappling with across the continent. Here in the southeast, it should mean building more wind turbines, as well as lots more solar farms and potentially even some additional nuclear power plants. That's according to Lord Deben, a former Environment Secretary and current chair of the Independent Climate Change Committee.
If gas prices are very high, we should be moving to renewables faster because they're very much cheaper. The people who say because gas prices are high we've got to have some more gas seem to me to be absolutely illogical. So of course we've got to have very much quicker movement to renewables. We've got to have much more energy efficiency. Both of those are necessary for climate change, but both of those are necessary to combat what is happening in the Ukraine.
He visited this flood prevention scheme at a park in Margate as part of a tour of environmental projects across Kent.
Dungeness, the South East only nuclear power station, being decommissioned. Was it a mistake in your view not to invest more heavily in nuclear power in recent years?
Well, we have, in the Climate Change Committee, always said that nuclear is a necessary part of the transition, and we didn't do it as early as we ought to do it.
County councillors are hopeful an atomic future can be secured for Dungeness as ministers review the country's energy supply.
We can't just have solar, we can't just have wind, we actually need nuclear as well. And Rolls-Royce appear to have come up with something that would suit us really well in Dungeness.
The climate appears to have been changing hour by hour this week on the streets of Margate thanks to a big budget film production, but the fear is that this fake snow could be real in the decades to come as we experience more and more extreme weather events if we don't become less reliant on fossil fuels.
And there was a warm reception to the idea of more wind and solar among the locals we spoke to.
I think we have to. We really don't have a choice. You know, there's those that think that they're eyesores, etc., but we either have power or we don't have power.
If there's no wind, you're scuppered. So I think nuclear energy, I'm afraid, is probably the way to go, definitely.
I'm for the wind farms because I think actually they've got a beauty about them.
But not on the land because it disturbs the sheep or cows. In the sea, plenty of sea.
While new sources of power could take years to come online, the cost of living crisis is already here for many. It seems finding a sustainable solution to our energy supply has never been more urgent. Kit Bradshaw, ITV News, Margate.
Let's return to the crisis in Ukraine, and 2 million refugees now on the move. And more than 22,000 people seeking shelter from the conflict have applied to the UK for an emergency visa, but so far only 760 have been granted.
Well, one of them was for Ola Smolik, who took her 2 young sons to safety to her sister in Canterbury. Tony Green went to meet her to find out what she'd endured on her 2,000-mile journey.
Heading to Poland, this was just the beginning of a 2,500-mile journey for Olha Smolik and her 2 young sons. Before they had even left Ukraine, they had to walk to the border, queuing for 20 hours to cross.
It was very difficult situation for us because we have no car and should to do it by feet, and children was very tired. I was very exhausted.
Olena, a lecturer at the University of Kent, travelled to France to help her sister. But the visa process wasn't easy and would be worse for those who don't have any help.
If I was alone with my children, it's
close to impossible.
It's impossible to do this.
Were there times when you thought, I'm never going to get to the UK, and what did it actually feel once you arrived?
I thought about this all my way. I'm so tired. Children cried. I had to be strong for them. I told them that we are going to such vacation. We have traveled because I don't want that they stressful situation, but on the border I should to talk them that we have no home and we have no place where we could go back.
Having fled her home, Olha and her children are finally safe and with the only family they have. But when or if they can ever return is unknown. Tony Green, ITV News, Canterbury.
And MPs from the southeast spoke to the Ukrainian ambassador in Parliament today, and the refugee visa crisis was top of the agenda. Live now to our political correspondent Phil Hornby. Phil, what were the MPs saying?
Well, this is an opportunity for them, first of all, to listen to the Ukrainian ambassador, but also to tell him of their frustration about the bureaucracy, the red tape, the slow pace of the visa application process. Here's one MP from Sussex.
The government has also said that we will take an uncapped number of people coming from Ukraine, but I think we're rather frustrated that that seems to be a rather slow and, as you mentioned, bureaucratic process.
And Phil, many MPs have called for refugees to be allowed in without a visa, and that would speed things up, wouldn't it?
It would, but the government say it would create potential security problems. They say it's absolutely crucial that we check every person who comes into this country. Not necessary, says one MP from Kent who was in Ukraine, as he says, just last week.
I was in Ukraine last week, and the thousands and thousands of people waiting to cross the border, I didn't see any men, it was women and children. So given that, is it not possible to perhaps filter people at our border? Because it will be, I would have thought, a relatively small number of people who there would be a security interest in.
One Kent man there who was in Ukraine last week. Let's see pictures now of another Kent man who is in Ukraine right now. 30-year-old Ben Grant, a former soldier, has gone out there to fight with the Ukrainians. And Ben Grant is the son of the Maidstone and Weald MP, Helen Grant. He told us, among other things, my mum didn't know I was coming here. She doesn't know I am here. Well, she does now. So let's hope Ben Grant keeps safe and well as he fights with the people of Ukraine.
Absolutely, Phil. Thank you.
Next, a public inquiry into the running of an immigration removal centre in Sussex has been shown dramatic footage of staff overpowering detainees.
The hearing follows a BBC Panorama programme alleging physical and verbal abuse at Brook House near Gatwick Airport.
The staff say they were working under extreme pressure. This report by Malcolm Shaw starts with images you may find upsetting.
A detainee at Brook House has removed his clothes and is refusing to leave his room. Officers at the Immigration Removal Centre decide to use force against him. He's restrained and handcuffed, but continues to call out and refuses to stand. Eventually, officers carry him out of his room. The manager in charge gives his team a debrief after the incident.
A job well done by the staff. Spoken to them individually about some learning points that we could have done differently.
Today, that manager, Steve Dix, gave evidence at the public inquiry into the running of Brook House.
Do you maintain that it was a job well done?
No CNR is easy or goes 100% how you plan, because if we are all human beings and we deal with human beings. Again, in hindsight, that there were clearly mistakes and errors made.
The inquiry was shown video of another incident involving Mr. Dix. He asks a detainee to leave his room. The man begins to walk towards the door, but other officers run in and overpower him. Steve Dix is heard to say no, no, no as they do so.
Do you wish that you'd waited for the answer to that question to be given?
Yes, if I didn't wait, then obviously I wish I did wait and I gave them enough opportunity, maybe.
The public inquiry into the centre at Gatwick follows allegations of ill treatment of detainees made in a BBC Panorama programme. The hearing has been told staff were often under extreme pressure. Brook House is now run by a different company. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News.
It's almost 6:15 and you're watching ITV News Meridian in the southeast with Matt and Sangeeta. Coming up. It used to be paper rounds and chores, so how are children really making their pocket money today?
And the first edition Harry Potter book at auction, but how much did it go for?
And remember, you can find more on today's top stories in the region throughout the day by heading to our website. Please go to itv.com/Meridian. And remember, you can also follow us. That's on Facebook and on Twitter.
Now, the ITV Evening News is after us, of course. To look ahead to their programme tonight, here's Mary Nightingale.
Coming up on the programme, a children's hospital is destroyed by an airstrike in Ukraine. The president blames the Russians for the attack in Mariupol, with a desperate search now on for survivors. Also tonight, we've obtained footage that shows Russian tanks on the streets of Irpin, a key strategic city on the edge of Kiev.
Look what they've done.
The struggle to survive in Kharkiv, one family's account from the first week of war.
Airstrikes all over the city. Dozens of buildings destroyed.
Plus, Shackleton's lost ship found a century on. Would you join me for those stories and more at 6:30?
Now, how did you make pocket money when you were younger? Maybe a paper round, doing chores around the house, something like that?
Do you know what I did, Matt?
What did you
because
do?
I was a bit of a princess. I can't help it. My parents would just overpay us dinner money, so we'd keep the change. And so that's how I made more money.
That's extortion.
Is it? Well, it worked. Well, anyway, see, I was ahead of the times, because new research shows that young people in our region are revolutionising the way they make money by tapping into the digital world and setting up so-called bedroom businesses.
Not extortion, quite legitimate. Children in the UK earned £148 million last year from things like gaming, cryptocurrency and social media, as Catherine Walker reports.
At just 17 years old, Amelie from Maidstone already has her own cake business.
About 3 years ago in the summer, I was literally just bored, and then I just had this idea to start making new things and trying recipes, and then I just loved it. And then eventually we ended up with too much food to eat in the house, so then people started just taking it off me and then saying, this is really good, you should sell it, and then I just started and it kind of grew from there.
New research shows that more young people than ever are earning their own pocket money or setting up their own businesses. Children in the UK earned £148 million in 2021. A quarter made their money from selling on online marketplaces. 1 in 5 made money from gaming, and 1 in 10 made money from content on social media.
I think what's changed is that the number of opportunities available online to make money have absolutely exploded. You know, the digital opportunities that are out there, and that mixed with COVID, which has meant more people spending more time at home, has really changed the mindset. And what we've seen is a lot of entrepreneurship, lots of children setting up their own businesses.
We need to make sure we absolutely make a flashbang of noise.
For some, these bedroom businesses can become successful companies. Childhood friends Oliver and Jacob started out selling sweets at school. Now in their 20s, they're co-founders of a multi-million-pound app.
I think it taught us a lot of business acumen. I think from a young age, Ollie would always man the locker. I'd be out and about searching for people to try and bring in those sales, as it were.
I think just having the will to work on a business while your friends are playing in the playground, realising actually you're having quite a lot of fun here and you're earning some money, that was kind of the turning point for us to realise, okay, let's do this again.
Today we're joined by a great entrepreneur who speaks about their journey in the business world.
Ted hosts a podcast interviewing young entrepreneurs across the country. He says social media is helping young business owners like Oliver and Jacob redefine the future of work.
I think young people are a lot more aware of money because it's everywhere. You go on YouTube, you'll see an entrepreneur telling you how to make £1 million in just a few weeks and stuff like that. So the opportunities to earn and learn how to make money are abundant.
Technology has revolutionised the way younger generations can make pocket money. Paper rounds have been swapped for bedroom businesses as children take their financial future more seriously. Catherine Walker, ITV News.
things have changed.
Yeah, it's good though that they're savvy and they're thinking. And it takes the pressure off the parents, Matt.
£2 to wash a car, nothing wrong with that, even in this day and age. Now, could urban beekeeping help alleviate the loss of bees in this country? Well, the tens of thousands of people who've taken up the hobby in the last decade are certainly hoping so.
13 species of bee have been lost since 1990 in the UK, and a further 35 are under threat of extinction, with loss of habitat key to their decline. And although that wild habitat can't be replaced in cities, bees are thriving in places you might not expect. Amrit Birdie has got the buzz.
Bees busily pollinating flowers in the garden will be a familiar sight for many of us soon, with spring just around the corner. But sadly, bees have been on the decline in Britain since the 1970s. Their extinction would have a devastating impact on not only other wildlife, but on humans too. Around a third of our favourite foods, such as strawberries, almonds and even coffee, are on our plates because of pollination. David Wood is director of Kent Beekeeping Association.
Bees, amongst other pollinators, do a vital job. It's not only honeybees, but bumblebees, and there are thousands of other small species of bee, and they all pollinate. It has a tremendous impact on the production of food and the spread of wildflowers. So species going extinct, it has a tremendous impact on the environment.
The bee-friendly trust fit planters in urban areas, like this train station in Frome, ahead of the warmer months. The aim is to encourage insects, including honeybees, to stop and pollinate when the flowers come up.
One of the problems that we find in cities and urban areas is that the floral pockets that we have are kind of, they're separated from each other. So although towns are quite good for bees because there's so many parks and gardens, it's getting from one garden to the next garden that can be the problem. So the Bee Friendly Trust works with railway stations because they form a natural network across the country. I like to think of them as kind of little pit stops for food and rest.
David Eaton has been keeping bees in his back garden for almost 50 years. He says the variety of trees and flowers in urban areas means they can flourish.
These hives here, there's only a couple of them, but I get more honey off these two than I do. I've got another 6 or 7, I suppose, altogether, because they're all down there. And all along here, there are gardens, and gardens just over there. And a bee will fly a mile and a half or something like a couple of kilometres to fetch nectar. So there's a huge area around here.
Despite the thousands of urban beekeepers, the number of bees in this country will not significantly increase without tackling the main factors contributing to their decline, which includes the widespread use of chemical pesticides as well as the loss of wild habitat. Amrit Birdie, ITV News.
And another special report for you on that tomorrow. Now to something that certainly proved to be a savvy investment. 25 years ago, a book collector from Sussex bought a hardback copy of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, thinking one day the schoolboy wizard created by J.K. Rowling would become a literary legend.
Well, how right he was, because today that copy bought for £12.99, pristine and unopened, and one of only 500 copies originally printed all the way back in 1997, went under the hammer, fetching a spell-binding amount.
To tell us how much is auctioneer Jim Spencer from Hanson. So come on, Jim, how much did it fetch?
Well, the big one, if you like, that was very finely preserved, went for £69,000. And then the example that was very damaged and was full of little doodles, that one went for, amazingly, £15,500.
Wow.
So £69,000 for the one that was in better condition to a collector in America, is that right? What more do we know about who bought it?
Yeah, private collector in California actually bought both books, the two extremes of the scale of condition. You know, the very damaged copy, which had been scribbled in, and this one that looked as new from 1997.
And the seller from Sussex who gave you the pristine copy, they really looked after it, didn't they? It had been kept in a darkened room. He didn't even let his daughter read it, but he almost returned it originally back in the 90s because it didn't have a dust cover.
Yeah, that's right. So he bought it. He was a collector of children's books. He saw a review in the Bookseller magazine and thought it sounded interesting. And he ordered it. And when it arrived, it didn't have a dust jacket. And other ones he'd seen on the shelves in the bookshop had jackets. So he tried to return it. I expect he's quite glad that they sort of didn't accept the return. And he managed to keep it. If you had a time machine and could go back to 1997, it wouldn't look any better than this one.
And Jim, just quickly, so any tips or advice for anyone wanting to do a similar thing, other than not letting your children read or doodle in the books? I mean, how can we all do the same thing and make thousands?
I mean, the crucial thing is to obviously keep things like this out of extremes of temperature and damp and humidity and all the rest of it. But in a way, this one that was doodled in, it was quite good that it was, because that sort of funny, charming fan art by that young reader at the time, I think, is what made it run for £15,500, because, you know, historians of the future will look at that, and I suppose it encapsulates Harry Potter fever, really, when you look at it. So if you've got one that's quite damaged, then maybe do get your kids to scribble in it, you know.
All these parents trying to hide them. Jim Spencer from Hanson's, thank you.
Great story. Slightly dodgy connection to him there, but we thought it was so good we had to stick with it.
Yeah, no, it was really, really good. Look at that scribbles and
Don't go scribbling without permission.
No,
just so you know.
That's true. Chris Page next with your weather.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Hello there. Very good evening to you. Today there has been some welcome sunshine across the region, and in fact Kerry even picked up this lovely photo of Cliff's End earlier on today. A beautiful sunrise there with the daffodil in the foreground, as you can see, and the feeling of spring continues with that mild air continuing to feed in from the south and west. We've got a weakening weather front through tomorrow, just introducing a touch more cloud, but there will still be further wet weather arriving as we head towards Friday and into the end of the weekend too, with the next frontal system waiting in the wings. Through this evening and overnight though, we've got some clear spells around, and there'll be patchy amounts of cloud too as that weakening frontal system pushes its way in from the west, but by no means a cold start to tomorrow. Temperatures holding up between 8 and 10 degrees Celsius. It means that we kick off into Thursday morning, a little light rain through the morning too, but I'm hopeful that we'll begin to see more brightness developing through tomorrow, so similar to today actually. The best of that brightness across the eastern part of Kent. The further west you are, still could see a few showers by the afternoon, but I think for most dry and with lighter winds tomorrow, it will feel a little bit warmer than today, reaching highs of 11 to 13 degrees Celsius. Now here are tide times for tomorrow, looking at Margate there at 4:30 tomorrow morning and 4 minutes past 5 tomorrow evening. As for Thursday and into Friday, we still have this weakening weather front that will continue to feed in some light showery rain through the night. But by Friday, that clears out of the way. Some brightness to start, but you'll notice that next frontal system that we spoke about starting to push its way in from the Atlantic, so eventually bringing in some further showery rain as we end the week. For Saturday, looks like we're in between frontal systems, so some sunny spells in the forecast, but further blustery showers arrive for Sunday. Bye-bye.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
And that's it from us for the time being. The ITV Evening News is, of course, coming up very shortly with Mary Nightingale.
We've had a lovely time this evening. We hope you have too. And if you have, why don't you join us here again tomorrow? Thank you for watching. Good night.
Bye-bye.